Alrighty, Fitfolk, in today's video we are talking about the 5 best breakfasts for weight loss. When I say best, that's a little bit of a subjective measure, but to give you an idea, the rankings that are put together today are based on 2 things. So based on a whole bunch of research that I've done over the years about what the most satiating, what the most filling breakfast is in terms of keeping you full and keeping you in a deficit. And also it's based on the results of the first 30 clients that went through our 10-week weekday weight loss challenge. So who lost the most weight and what the most effective breakfast was for my clients that went through this challenge. We're going to go through our 5 favorites, but we're going to start off with the breakfast that I think is probably the worst breakfast you can imagine. Alrighty, first up, we're just going to talk about what I think is the worst breakfast. And I'm kind of just going to use this as a general example for the problem with modern kind of hyper-processed, hyper-palatable food. So when I say the worst breakfast, I mean the combination of a pastry, a takeaway pastry, and a milky, sugary kind of coffee. And this is a classic on-the-run, grab at Starbucks kind of breakfast. And the problem with it is it's just not very filling. Now, I don't really like hating on particular foods, and if you have infinite willpower and great ability to, not kind of eat when you're hungry, you can totally eat this as a breakfast and still lose weight. It's absolutely fine, you could do it. But the problem is, for most of us, this will just cause us to be hungry later in the day, and it will contribute to overeating. I just want to prove this to you that this really is bad. When they did some testing years ago on a satiety index, so they tested the common foods in terms of their fillingness relative to white bread, what you found was that there were things that had a lot of protein, a lot of water, and a lot of fiber, really filling. But the absolute worst food in the whole list was the croissant. That's the least filling food they can imagine. And this is just an absolute perfect metaphor for the 3 ingredients that have contributed most to the obesity epidemic, and that is added cheap vegetable oil that you put in processed food, flour, so highly processed, refined grain flour that you put in food, and to a lesser degree, sugar. And I can actually show you this with some data from the increased calorie intake in the American diet in recent years, and you'll see that these 3 ingredients form the basis of so many hyper-processed, kind of hyper-palatable foods that we just overeat. So whether it's, Doritos or chocolate or ice cream, all these great snack foods that are delicious, they cause us to overeat. And when it comes to breakfast, this is really not the breakfast that you want if you're trying to lose some weight. Alrighty, at number 5, I have cereal, and I will admit this is a little bit of a strange one in terms of a good breakfast for weight loss, because you would generally think that a pretty energy-dense cereal isn't going to keep you full. And this is pretty much true. But cereal is just so convenient. I think it's really great to have a kind of high fiber, low sugar cereal sitting in your cupboard as a backup purely because of the convenience factor. And yeah, I don't advocate it to most of the people in the weekday weight loss program, and it isn't a breakfast that a lot of people are using as their standard or primary breakfast, but it's just really good to have as a backup. And I think a simple way to think about it is just basically avoid any cereals with really high sugar content, so your classic kind of, Fruit Loops or Crunchy Nut Corn Flakes, Frosties, these types of things, and go for your more traditional low or no added sugar, high fiber cereals. So that would be Wheat Bix, shredded wheat, all bran to a degree. Bread's really high fiber, the sugar's a bit all over the place. And then if you can you want to try and get some protein in there, so just some milk or some Greek yogurt. And yes, this isn't the best weight loss breakfast, but at number 5, I just really like to have it in there because people suddenly think that you're not allowed to eat cereal, and this is just wrong. Like, there's plenty of people who incorporate cereal into a healthy breakfast, and if you can add a bit of kind of low caloric density fruit, it can make a really lovely breakfast to grab when you have 0 time. Okay, sneaking in at number 4, we have oatmeal or porridge. And this is actually my breakfast. When I'm trying to lose weight, this is the breakfast I eat pretty much every weekday. But it's not the typical breakfast of the people in the challenge. So, it got demoted to number 4. But I love it. For me, it's really just a really athletic thing to eat. So it reminds me of being an athlete, gives me really good energy. It is statistically very, very filling, like we know that from the satiety index, and it is also just a real favorite among sports nutritionists because it gives you a really good supply of energy. It's got great fiber in it, beta glucan, fills you up, fills your stomach up, really lovely in the winter. I make it with milk to add some protein in, and then slightly fewer oats and add a bit of flaked almonds on top. So I think oatmeal is amazing. The evidence base for it is really good. It's really heart healthy, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, and some people do get a little bit hungry on it. So that is why it is in at number 4, but it is certainly, in terms of a grain-based breakfast, it is, I think, by far and away the best. So give it a thought. It's a lovely one to have in the winter. Alrighty, at number 3, we have the simplest of breakfast, which is a black coffee. No breakfast. Fasting. It's become very trendy lately, but the evidence base is really, really interesting. And this idea that you absolutely have to eat breakfast is a nonsense. You can go to any intermittent fasting community on the internet and you will see loads and loads of success stories of people who used to eat lots and lots of meals and then switched to just eating like lunch, a small snack and dinner in a time-restricted 8-hour window, and they had great, great results. And in fact, in the Weekday Weight Loss program, very few people chose to skip breakfast. Very few. I think, in fact, only 2. But one of the 2 people that decided not to eat breakfast was our biggest loser. So lost 26 pounds, a guy in Adelaide named Ben. He lost 26 pounds over the 10 weeks, and he just decided, because of his work life and the fact that he didn't necessarily wake up hungry, that skipping breakfast was a really good idea for him. And that might be the case for you. Some people actually, ironically, get better hunger control by just learning to push through and not eat breakfast, push through that first hunger, you adjust to it after a while, and then just have a really filling lunch. And that can work wonders for people. The intermittent fasting people watching this were thinking, well, how come it isn't number 1? And there are 2 reasons. Firstly, it isn't number 1 because most people like breakfast and they want to eat breakfast. And secondly, if you actually research the fasting, the academic side of fasting, people don't really talk about intermittent fasting. They talk about time-restricted feeding, which is condensing your eating into a window of, say, 8, 10, or 12 hours in a day. And they talk about kind of 5-day fasts or fasting mimicking diets. So this is probably the hotter one, where you have 5 days of quite low kind of quite low calories, ketogenic type diet, and that mimics a 5-day fast, which will give you all these autophagy and longevity benefits. But here's the really interesting thing. The 2 world-leading experts on fasting do not think it's the best idea to skip breakfast. And if you push them, they will tell you actually a better idea and a more practical and healthier alternative is to skip lunch. And that is simply because of your circadian rhythm. There's actually a decent argument for eating breakfast, like breakfast in the morning, when your insulin sensitivity is really good and your body is pretty well programmed to deal with food. And there is a lot of research showing that actually, that's quite healthy time to eat food, whereas eating food later at night isn't necessarily the best idea. So we haven't put intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast straight to number 1. It works for some people. For some people, it gives them amazing hunger control. And if that is you, then definitely consider this. But there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be eating breakfast if you want to eat breakfast in the morning, because at the end of the day, it's great and it's really healthy. So let's talk about 2 options. Okay, the second most successful breakfast we had in the Weekday Weight Loss program was Greek yogurt. It is fast, it is nutritious, it is really filling. The only argument that we have is whether you should be going with the 0 fat or the kind of full fat Greek yogurt. So there's like Fage or Chobani or whatever, these types of no added sugar, strained yogurts, technically not even Greek yogurt, but we call it Greek yogurt because people understand that. It's just a really simple way to get a whole bunch of protein in. It's really filling. I think a really smart thing to add to it is some type of fibrous fruit, not too kind of high calorie, but more full of kind of nutrients and fiber, and the obvious one is to add berries. So here I've got some strawberries, I've got a kiwi chopped up, and just a few flaked almonds on top, and this is a really cracking breakfast, and it is super, super fast. In terms of the kind of low fat v high fat, I just think the high fat full fat one is just a superior texture. So I always plump for that, but we do have a number of people who just grab a little punnet of like Fabergé, low fat, and just a couple of bits of fruit. And that's a tiny, like really small breakfast, but it just kind of fills you and it gives your body that little hit of protein for not that many calories. And it's just a really, really smart breakfast. You know, it works for the people of Iceland. They're super, super healthy. And there's also been studies on the high fat v low fat kind of dairy, and actually there's very little between it. You could well argue that actually high fat dairy is healthier in many ways. So Greek yogurt, it is a phenomenal breakfast. It is very popular among the people in the weekday weight loss group, and when I added up all the weights, the aggregate weight loss for people eating Greek yogurt was second only to one other breakfast, which we're going to talk about now. Okay, so our number one breakfast with a bullet is eggs. I've just knocked up some scrambled eggs on a piece of sourdough toast here, and I'm going to talk about a few different things about why eggs are pretty special. Now, I personally don't eat eggs for breakfast. I don't like eggs for breakfast. Eggs at 7 in the morning just doesn't work for me. But when I tallied up all the results from the 10-week challenge, so the first kind of 30 people that went through it, by far and the most weight was lost by people eating eggs. And there are a couple of reasons why eggs are really, really good, and I'm going to talk about them now. But first up, I just want to point out that eggs suffered pretty badly, their reputation suffered pretty badly in like the 80s and 90s because of their cholesterol. But recently, the dietary advice around cholesterol, in like the restriction on dietary cholesterol, has been lifted in the most recent dietary guidelines. I think the 2015 to 2020 they've lifted it because they basically found out that the link between the cholesterol that you eat and the cholesterol in your system wasn't as strong. Now, obviously, if you have genetically high cholesterol, eating a whole bunch of egg yolks might not be the thing for you. But for most of us, eggs are pretty reasonable food to eat. They are super nutritious. They're really affordable. I would say the only downside of them is sometimes they take a little bit of time and they can be a bit antisocial, like in a communal space. But if you like eggs, you should really consider incorporating them into your weight loss diet, whether that's at breakfast or lunch or dinner. They are a really useful food. So they've also tested eggs against oatmeal, like my favorite. And they have found that based on satiety kind of measures, so ghrelin and whatnot, that actually the eggs outperformed oatmeal. And oatmeal's quite a filling breakfast food, but eggs outperformed. That was the experience I had in my group. And I just think it's a really, really simple and great food for people. Now, you can make omelets. If you're going to make an omelet, chuck in loads of fibrous vegetables like mushrooms or capsicums, peppers, things like that. I've put them on bread here just as an example, because typically if someone thinks eggs is the best food, then they're not going to include it in bread. But actually the studies are really clear that actually keeping white bread in your diet, not being too overly restrictive, is quite a smart thing to do. And they found that, you know, if you don't restrict yourself away from a food like bread, which can be incorporated, it's not the most filling food, but just having one piece of bread with a couple of eggs, I think is an amazing breakfast, really. And because of the eggs, that one piece of bread is not going to kind of make you too hungry. It's really, really good. If you're going to eat, like this is sourdough bread, so it's amazing. And the people in the Weekday Weight Loss program, whether they were just having breakfast for eggs or like a brunch, they did really, really well with eggs. So it is a very good food. Okay, last up, I just want to have a little bit of fun because the idea of the best breakfast is very subjective. It's going to be the one that works for you. It's not necessarily what is technically the best food according to the research. It's actually what works. So you've really got to play with these things to work out what is best for you. And I think this is a really fun little game that you can try. So basically, these 4 breakfasts, if we get rid of the cereal, because that's just kind of a backup breakfast, it's not quite filling enough. Decide between, you should really be able to put these 4 in order. So for me, it's very simple. I will go with oatmeal first, Greek yogurt second, a black coffee third, and then eggs fourth. And you know, I've put eggs fourth despite the fact knowing that they are the best within my group of clients. But for me, I just can't eat eggs in the morning. I will happily eat that. That is a lunch for me, or a brunch at the weekend. That's amazing. I can do pretty well skipping breakfast and pushing it back a bit. I really love Greek yogurt, so this is my alternative breakfast. I will happily eat this anytime, and this is my absolute standard breakfast. So if I'm going to do a workout or if I've got an energetic day, oatmeal is my go-to. And I think, you should really be able to do this. Just doing that, knowing what your best breakfast, your first, second, and third breakfasts are. So for instance, just like that for me, or if you're eggs and then oat, just something that's really, really good way to start this process in a really simple way that's not thinking too much about calories or macros or stopping eating other foods, or just getting your breakfast sorted, whether it's no breakfast or whether it's Greek yogurt. That's a really, really clever thing to do. And I'm going to be starting another weekday weight loss challenge, and I think April 30th. So if you're interested, do check that out. It is going to be, May is going to be a festival of breakfast. So at the moment, I think we have 6 recipes on there, and I am going to build that out to all sorts of things. So with the pancakes and the overnight oats, and we'll be doing frittatas and all types of things. I'm going to do whatever the people want. We'll probably do them with videos. It's going to be a bit of fun. So if you're interested, check that out. But really do think about what your best breakfast is, because I have found that when you nail down that breakfast and start eating it consistently, that can really, really help people, because you can't spend your whole day being hungry. If you nail your breakfast, it is going to go a long way to putting you on the track to sustainable weight loss, and that is what we're all about. Thanks for your time. I think I'm going to eat a couple of these. Catch you later. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out Weekday Weight Loss, our 10-week program that teaches you how to lose weight without messing up your social life.